Hello everyone, Jane Reaction here, and it is Tuesday, so that means it is time to get technical. Oh yeah. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about jumping, and today is going to be a little different in that I'm going to talk about all of the things that I've read and watched. I've been watching and taking in a lot of different opinions and articles on the interwebs, and there are different camps, or maybe not camps. Like, I don't think anyone's really said, I am in this camp, I am in this camp. I don't think there's been that kind of discussion. But there are, what's interesting when you watch people talk about proper jump form is that they talk about different things. They focus on different parts of the jump. So what this is going to be is an attempt to sort of bring all the information together and sort of curate it in a way that makes sense for me, because some of it's contradictory. And in how, I've been watching how I jump and how I perform and how it feels for me, and sort of taking what everybody's saying and trying to find sort of a nice balance. Before we start, if you are not jumping for any reason, bad joints, whatever, you don't worry about this video. I filmed a video so many weeks ago that was talking about what to do if you can't jump, and it talked about different modifications for jumping. So I would refer you to that video. But if you're into jumping and you want to learn a little more, stick around. In my opinion, I feel like there are a lot of cues for proper jump technique that actually follow directly from cues for proper squat technique. So let's talk about some of those things. One thing is, when you are squatting, you want to think about bringing your butt back and just sitting down to sort of like chair height. Now, if you notice, my knees are sort of right over the edge of the toes. I'm not leaning forward very much. This is going to load my glutes more, as opposed to when I lean forward, it's going to load my quads more. And the first sort of point of contention is that sort of talking about how you load your body for the squat. So I have seen some people say, lean forward, you're doing sort of a squat and a hinge, which means you're going to lean forward and bring your arms back to load for the squat. Now, like I said, this is going to be more quad dominant, and if you get too low, you can see one of the things that they talk about is, sometimes you'll see your knees go past your toes. If you might recall from a squat, when I was talking about squatting previously, there was this old convention, old myth, that your knees should never go past your toes because it puts too much pressure on certain joints. But really, if your knees don't go past your toes, you're putting a lot more strain on your lower back, so it's actually okay. So there are some people that say you should bend back and load your glutes more, knees not going over the toes. But then there are other people who are saying you should lean forward more. One of the reasons, but the main reason why people talk about leaning back and having less of a forward lean is to load your glutes, which are stronger and can supposedly get you a higher jump. So if getting a good vertical jump is important to you, you should try seeing, how do you normally jump? Do you normally lean forward and put more focus in the quads? Or do you lean back more like it's a squat and load your glutes more? And what do you get more of a vertical jump out of? So theoretically, since your glutes are stronger, you should get more height out of your glutes. Looking at how I jump, I'm a little more quad dominated, I'll admit it. So some people would say I'm doing it wrong. However, in my very technical experiment that I did prior to this, I looked at some videos of me jumping, and I got about the same height, maybe like an inch or two higher with the glute jump, with the, more leaning back. The other thing I found is that for me personally, it's harder for me to swing my arms when I'm in this glute dominated jump, because when I swing my arms back, my personal tendency is to lean forward. Another thing that was pointed out was that people who tend to have quad dominated jumps, when they get to the top of their jump, their butt will still tend to stick out. And one of the main facets of jumping is that you have what we call triple extension. So your hips are extended, your knees are fully extended, and your toes are plantar flexed. So at the top of your jump, you should be all the way up, vertical, and on your toes. Whereas sometimes when people are quad dominant, when they get to the top of their jump, their butt sticks out a little bit. And therefore you're not getting the most power out of your jump. So take a video of yourself. Make a common, really think about getting into that jump with your glutes. Do you see a difference? You might. It might be worth it. Going back to squatting form, another thing that we want to talk about is that when you go down, your knees should track over your toes. And so one of the biggest problems with jumping, and particularly with landing, is that people have their knees come inward. So you really want to focus on making sure everything stays aligned, because if you have your knees start to come in, it's a lot of strain on places where you don't need it. It can lead to things like ACL tears, which are not fun. So, as I said before, when you're going into the jump, you're going to sit back. We'll say we're going into a squat, like you're going into a squat. You bring your arms back, and then you go into triple flexion, or triple extension, sorry. Triple extension of your toes, knees, and hips. So now that landing was really bad. So we're going to talk about landing. So the one thing that there are two things that everyone should agree on. One is don't land on your heels, okay? Because first of all, I'm not quite sure how you do that, but just puts load on your body in places you don't need it. Again, places you don't need it. The other thing that everyone can seem to agree on is landing softly. So what does that mean? When you land loud, you're just coming down, you're not really absorbing the impact. So everything about landing is about absorbing the impact to minimize the pressure on your joints. So one of the things we talk about is landing softly, and what that requires is bracing. So in a previous discussion, I talked about keeping your core tight and really bracing, engaging your glute and thigh muscles all the way down through your feet, and using that bracing, really engaging those muscles to help absorb some of the impact. So it can go from a loud landing to a softer landing. So whenever you're landing, you want to think stealth like the ninja, soft like the jungle cat. Whatever cue helps you to brace and minimize that sound. Now here's where things get a little murky for me personally. There are so we talked about not landing on your heels. Now there are some people who say you should land on the balls of your feet. Don't land on your toes, that would be weird, but landing on the balls of your feet, or maybe just past the balls of your feet, a little bit towards your ankle. Other people say that you want to have the entire foot land absorbing all of the impact of the jump. However, I've never, in all of those publications that talk about having your entire foot land, it's never been clear if it's the initial impact is with your whole foot, or if you just want to make sure the whole foot eventually lands. Because I have seen some people say, land on the balls of your feet, and only the balls of your feet. And when I personally try to land on my entire foot, I feel like it's very difficult for me to land softly. So I'm going to say that when you are landing, you want to land on the balls of your feet, but then lower yourself down so that the entire foot eventually comes and makes contact with the ground. And that is my interpretation of making sure that you are properly deloading and having the whole weight go through your body. So let's try a couple of jumps. Okay, pardon me for my takeoff if it's not good. All right, so I'm going to try landing my heels first. Ooh, that's weird. Okay, this is weird. Also, now I'm going to try just landing on the balls of my feet. What I would probably say about just landing on the balls of your feet is that it causes a lot of tightness in your calves and your leg muscles. Also, if you're prone to weak ankles, I think it would heighten the risk for twisting an ankle or something like that. My personal opinion, not fact, not necessarily fact. Could be proven somewhere. But if I go and I take my jump and I land on my balls of my feet and then let my heels come down, I feel like it helps absorb the entire impact more. And the other thing that you'll notice is that my knees bent. So if you try to keep your knees locked, what just happened there is that I had a ton of pressure go into the balls of my feet, and then everything just sort of like stopped. Technical term. Everything just sort of like stopped. Okay? So you want to think about, I sort of think of jumping as being a spring. So you're loading down, you're getting that potential energy, chemical energy stored in your legs. You're going to come up off of your toes, and then you land on your toes and you come back down, and it's basically just repeating this process. Down, up, down, up. Personally, that makes a lot of sense to me. And again, if I'm misinterpreting something where you're really supposed to land on your whole foot and then just have your knees bend from there, feel free to correct me, but that's sort of how I interpret all of this. And one thing that I saw someone talking about was, if you're in a basketball game, you go for a jump, you're not necessarily going to come down to a full squat, you might just come down to a slight squat. That's sort of getting into minutia. What I'm talking about right now are going to be jumps, not in a sports setting necessarily, but basically if you're doing any sort of plyo move for a workout. So we talk about repeated jumps. So it's just going to go down, up, down, up, down, up. And I'm constantly plantar flexing, landing on the balls of my feet, coming back down, and repeating. And for me, it just makes it, it works. The system works. So, in review, think about your squat cues, making sure that your knees track over your toes, making sure that when you are jumping, you're in triple extension, so knee extension, hip extension, and plantar flexion, so pointed toes. For my opinion, reversing that process as you come down. Balls of your feet hit, then your heel hits, then your knees start to bend and you go back into a squat before you reload and go back up. And also, finally, thinking about whether you have too much of a forward lean and you're more quad dominant in your jumps. I was doing jumping yesterday and I can feel it in my quads today. So, or if you're gonna sit back more like you're in a real squat and make it more glute dominant so you can get more power. So that is what I have compiled in my great search about jumping, and I hope that was beneficial for you. If you have any comments or questions, hit me up. I'd be glad to talk more about it. But until next time, get hopping, jump around, jump up, bitch. Okay, I'll show myself out. Thank you. Okay, bye.